So this weekend gives me my first extra day off in several months that was not unplanned, was not me using my anxiety as an excuse for not going into work. Since that time, my supervisor has, she's a really great supervisor. She is very aware not only of her own self, but she is aware of those who work with her and work under her. And she wanted me to sign FMLA paperwork so that should, and presumably when, my anxiety becomes an issue again, I am protected. The double scam, and I say scam in like a really internal way, the double scam of anxiety is that you feel like if you get out of bed, if you leave the house, if you go to work, if you change some microcosm of the day, things, they already feel bad, but they're going to get way worse. You have no way of knowing it. There's no quantification. There's no measurement. You can't see it. You can't touch it. You can't hear it. You can't taste it. You can't smell it, but it's there. And then the entire day, while you're at home, you're just worried that you're going to get a call from your boss saying, when you come back to work tomorrow, we need to have a talk. And that's going to be you being exited from wherever you work. And your life is going to be shattered again. That's how anxiety works. And that's just generalized anxiety disorder. At age 12, I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder, which is a 1% anxiety disorder. Going into junior high at age 12, I was not popular by any stretch of the imagination, and I'm a pretty imaginative person. Girls hated me, guys hated me. People didn't like me because I had the audacity to say I was Mexican. So the Mexican kids at school didn't like me because my last name is Chihak. Because my skin is light, because my eyes are light, and I don't speak Spanish. That rolled over into high school. But the OCD kicked in junior high. And I think the only time I was safe from everything was when I was asleep. And the interesting thing about that is now, as an adult with still dealing with obsessive compulsive disorder, understanding it quite a bit better and knowing different ways to manage it. Of course, there's medication, yoga, just stopping, breathing, meditation. I have a pretty good regimented exercise routine. My artwork, the Bubba's, Agnew, and that's the thing is at 40 years old, almost 41, I still take Agnew with me places. He goes to the movies with me. He goes to Black Crown with me. He goes to my art group with me. He goes to my comic book group with me. Um, and I don't know if I've become just more accustomed to it or if maybe everybody else has, because there's never an issue now, you know. Um, and maybe that's just a level of confidence that I know that Agnew is my friend, and strange as that might sound to somebody, um, he's been around longer than anybody else. He's never turned his back on me. Uh, and when you're somebody who has not had a whole lot of really close friends um, in their life, um, having that stability and that security is not only good for, ego and depression, it's really good for anxiety. Um, you need routine, but you also need to be kicked out of it every once in a while. And so I'm working on Bubba Patrol 3, which I'm calling BP3. Um, the story centers, it's an origin story of one of the dogs. Um, but it brings everything full circle. It connects all the universes together. Euthanasia, Fuzzy Face, the Bubba Patrol. Uh, and it's the first fully digital uh, production that I'm doing. In fact, the free comic book day Bubba Files that I did was actually the first, because I did that to be able to give away, and it did really, really well. And I'm just really excited for people to be able to see this next chapter, but it's almost also like a prelude, um, or a prologue in a way, a prequel and a subsequent issue. Um, but I started out this 3-day weekend not really getting anything done. I got my first upper body workout done in a couple of weeks, which was really important because um, I had messed up my elbow, and it's in the same arm as the shoulder that's messed up, and it hurts a little bit right now, but it's not bad. Um, in the first upper body workout I've done in about 2 weeks, just been stretching my elbow and my forearm and stuff like that, trying to get the tendons nice and loose and uninflamed. But the idea was to get here and concentrate and jam out some work, and I got 3 panels done. And that doesn't seem like a lot, but um, it really is, because these 3 panels are pretty instrumental in the story itself. They definitely don't culminate the story, but I decided to watch the animated adaptation of All-Star Superman, which is without a doubt my favorite Superman story ever. And other than when I was a little kid and I didn't know anything about comic books, Superman was never really that important to me. But understanding now that Superman is this ideal, that everybody can be better. And this story just talks about how Superman is seeing his end time, his end of days, and he's dealing with it graciously, and he just knows that there's so much work that has to be done, and he won't stop until it's done, but there are still roadblocks in the way. It's not like there's a free path to fix everything. And it reminds me and makes me think of a conversation I've had with one of my friends multiple times. We're both in creating comic books and stuff like that. And I was telling them, Superman could fix all the problems in the world. He's without a doubt the most powerful being on the planet. Probably the most benevolent being on the planet. And, if all of his cells are enhanced by Earth's yellow sun and his Kryptonian biology, wouldn't that also probably make him the smartest man on the planet? Meaning he could figure it out. The idea of that, though, is Superman responsible for fixing the world? Because he can. Or is that our responsibility? Because we should. It's our world. Superman could exist without, clean water and air and stuff like that. We can't. And we continue to create problems, whether it's war, whether it's poverty, whether it's racism, xenophobia. We create all these things out of what we think are necessities. And in a way, it's fear and anxiety. Because anxiety is fear, but anxiety is fear of stuff that is completely irrational. Sometimes not. But when you break it down all the way to the core, and you step away from it, years later, I can look at, what I was going through when I was 12 and 13 and 14 and stuff, when the OCD was really fresh. I can look at it and be like, God, I can see why people really thought I was crazy. I can see why my dad thought I was on drugs, because of the things I was doing. It just doesn't make any sense. But in that, when you step away and you remove yourself from the situation, and that's been 25 years or more, it's pretty crazy to think. But at the same time, hindsight is always 20/20, and we can always be better. It doesn't matter how little or how much time we have. And the thing that I've noticed with myself lately, these past couple of months, I've been isolating myself, which is very indicative of somebody with anxiety and depression. It's also indicative of somebody who is using, which I know a lot about because I used to be a full-fledged alcoholic, almost a fall-down drunk. And I found myself getting irritated and upset and even angry at people for very, very superficial reasons. It's been very busy at work, but that's not an excuse. I have people on social media who will respond or say something that's just trivially stupid, but that's not a really good reason. I have friends who might say something or might do something that I just think is why are you doing this? Why are you behaving this way? But we all have our predilections, and that's something that we all have to work on, and that's something that we all have to work on together. And just like with Superman, it's not my job to fix somebody else. It's not my job to fix the entire world. It's my job to make myself as good as I can be and better than I was yesterday, and hopefully better tomorrow. But in order to do that, I need to remain clear-headed and keep going forward. And that's why this project is, each subsequent issue of the Bubba Patrol just gets more and more personal and more organic and more beautiful. And I'm going to leave you with the thought that at the end of All-Star Superman, he starts, his body literally starts breaking apart, and light just starts shining through because he's turning into energy. And it reminded me of 2008. June 13th, it was a Friday the 13th, June 2008. I said goodbye to Cyprus the first Bubba. And she was 16, and she had been my best friend for such a long time. She had got me through high school, got me through cancer, anxiety, hard times with relationships and letdowns and things like that, and college, and saw my first books published. And when I said goodbye to her, it was the hardest decision I ever had to make, and it was the hardest thing I had ever done in my entire life. And I remember the next day, we were watching Powder, movie from the 90s, and this kid who, his mom got struck by lightning when she was pregnant with him and going into labor, and he was born essentially albino. He had no hair on his body. He was able to tap into 100% of his brain power and ability all at the same time. He was able to utilize 100% of the higher functions of his brain all at the same time. And at the end of the movie, he runs out into a field and he bursts into energy. And at that moment, one day after the fact, tears just started pouring out of my eyes. Because like in this scene with Superman, I realized she's energy. She's always been energy. And I don't know a lot about science, but I do know that energy always is. Once energy has been created, it can change form, it can change mass, it can change shape, but it cannot be destroyed. And that is something that makes me extraordinarily happy and hopeful. Because no matter what, Cypress is always going to be there. And so is Sabu, and so is Guri, and so is Benji, who was the first Bubba before the first Bubba, but I was too little to understand or respond accordingly. But we're all energy. You can't destroy us. Good night.